2013, at this stage, the man who would become Pope Francis, Bergoglio, was actually then well ahead, but he hadn't yet got to the two-thirds, but he clearly had the momentum. And then back at lunch, back at the Santa Marta, everybody was coming up to him saying, you better get your speech ready, and asking him about his health. He said that's how he knew it was likely. And it actually, however, took longer to get to the two-thirds because one of the ballots in the afternoon, when two ballots were stuck to each other, so they had to do a complete recount. Actually, if that hadn't happened, we would have had the result in 2013 after the first vote at tea time, so whatever, around 6 o'clock. So just to say, things can happen, you know, that do change things.
They can.
But actually, if there's no slip-up this afternoon, which really means they're back in the Santa Marta from 4:30 local time, 3:30 UK time. You probably take them about an hour and a half to do that first ballot. We could get a white smoke then. Equally, we could get a white smoke after the second one. And it's always possible to go into tomorrow. But the last two conclaves, it has been decided in the afternoon of day two. So that's where we are.
The longer conclave was John Paul II, wasn't it? And there were good reasons for why that went to 8 votes rather than the 4 or 5 that we saw for Pope Benedict and Pope Francis.
So what can happen at this stage is that you get two front runners who essentially block each other. Neither can get to the two-thirds, and their followers are kind of sticking with them. That's a sort of divided conclave, and last time this happened was indeed 1978. And what happened on that occasion was that over lunch, everything happens over lunch during the conclave, they kind of agreed that neither could prevail, and therefore they must look for a third candidate. And that's how Karol Wojtyla became John Paul II. But of course that all took longer, and that's why it took so many ballots. I don't think this conclave will be divided into two blocks in the same way. It feels much
Catholics globally, but also the rest of the world, that we are united, that we know which direction we want the church to take. The longer this goes on, the more likely it is they'll get people wondering, well, how united are the hierarchy within the Catholic Church? And that's damaging.
It's a very important point. I mean, the Pope that comes out on that balcony whenever he does is the fruit of the consensus of the cardinals. If they're struggling to find that consensus, obviously that sends a poor signal. But on the other hand, it is important that they get that consensus. So sometimes it can take longer. Ultimately, they're not going to be worried about the PR element. They're going to make sure that they get the right man who is the consensus. But on the other hand, we have got 4,000 journalists accredited here, the world's media camped out here, and obviously a conclave that went on would send a pretty poor signal. I don't think that's going to happen. All the conclaves recently, you know, the last few conclaves have been pretty expeditious. I don't expect this one to be different, but who knows?
Who knows indeed. And one of the things I love about this conclave is that it's the most diverse. When we're talking through the cardinals from Madagascar, from Japan, from Iran, from all over the world. That's a wonderful thing, and it's the thing that Pope Francis really wanted. But it also brings with it some difficulties when it comes to organising a process like this.
So back in 2013, we had, I think, 50 countries represented in the college. This time it's 70. Deliberate choice by Pope Francis to bring in the peripheries of the world into the conclave as part of the discernment, we say in the church, to work out what's happening with the world, what kind of pope we need for this time. But you're right, it brings a challenge. And one of the criticisms that they have made of Pope Francis is that he didn't bring them together enough times as a whole college. He did have a number of what we call consistories, but only 2 times did he call them all together. So they haven't had a lot of chance to get to know each other. They've had the funeral to deal with, of course. Of the 2/3, which of course in this case is 89 votes, and they're very focused on that task because they see it in a way as that's how people say, how is this the Holy Spirit involved in this, how's God involved in this? They would say we've emptied our hearts and minds and we're open to whoever. And when they see somebody who's got that momentum and they talk about a sense of peace that often comes with that, and then really it's a fairly straightforward matter of getting them over the line.
So I want to ask you, do you know that Pope Gregory X in 1274 dictated that under lock and key, if the conclave took longer than 3 days, the cardinals were only to receive bread, water and some wine to eat. That was all they're going to get.
That's it.
Because he wanted to pressure them to make the decision.
Focus their minds.
Focus. But nowadays, I can tell you, having done the research, that the lunch served to the cardinals includes Lazio delicacies from the local area, such as minestrone, spaghetti, lamb. I mean, it sounds amazing to really start talking.
And a glass of wine if they want it.
I don't know. They want to drink wine. They want to drink wine. They may not want to.
This is Italy. It's normal to have a glass of wine with your lunch, not spirits but wine. They have an opportunity, of course, to have a riposo, a little rest in the afternoon, and that's very important. These are